prejudicial against the defendant. This isn't really about Access Hollywood. This trial. This is about a series of transactions to cover up embarrassing conduct. And you can make an argument that that's not quite the same legally as the Access Hollywood tape. What Trump's lawyers could do down the road is say that by playing the Access Hollywood tape in court, it got in the jury's heads, it confused them about these hush money payments, and really just made Donald Trump seem like a rotten guy that they should have convicted. So
yeah, I mean, he did get elected even though the Access Hollywood tape came out. So, I mean, there is that. But, I mean, Lulu, the other thing is the New York Times' Maggie Haberman was in that room and reports, we can put this on screen, Trump, quote, appeared to nod off a few times, his mouth going slack and his head drooping onto his chest. The former president's lead lawyer, Todd Blanche, passed him notes for several minutes before Mr. Trump appeared to jolt awake and notice them. CNN's own reporting, we should note, is that Trump had his eyes closed for several minutes while leaning back in his chair. What's your sense of this? So, if my question is not making you nod off.
Sorry, where am I again? It's early.
Yeah.
What I would say is, first of all, he's old, and old men take naps. It was a long proceeding, and so that I would just say in his defense. The other thing I would say is this: what is so interesting about this trial, and I think was a mistake strategically, is that it is not on television, and so we are relying on the fantastic Maggie Haberman and others who are in the courtroom to tell us this. But did you see what the defense actually did and Trump's people actually did? They denied it. They said it did not happen and that it was lies. And so at this point, it's not only Donald, but it's not only Donald Trump who's on trial. It is actually, again, as with everything to do with Donald Trump, reality and truth itself. And there will be a segment of the population who simply do not believe that he nodded off. If this had happened on television and we were all playing that tape, it might have had an impact to the way that people perceive this trial. But instead, it is going to, again, be filtered through the partisan lens.
And moreover, the former president has this tendency to take a fact that's based in some truth, legally or whatever else, and spin it into an absolute lie. And every single one of these small rulings that he wins, he can come out that afternoon and say, we won. We're winning this whole trial. Can you understand why no one understands why we're even here.
But there's some Trumpian silliness going on here. They're going to go after Sleepy Joe. He nods off in court. I mean, what's the point of saying he did nod off?
Well, the silliness is this claim about high school graduations. There are internet sleuths who have pointed out that Donald Trump has never attended any of his previous children's high school graduation. One of the follow-up questions would be, the son whose graduation you'd like to attend, what is his name, please? Because Trump often seems to be unaware of the son's name. But there's a more serious point here. Donald Trump is talking about his presence in the courtroom as if it's a burden to him, as if it's an imposition. The reason he is there is not because he's being inconvenienced. He's there because it's a right to be in court. It's a right guaranteed by the Sixth Amendment. And the reason it's compulsory is because American judicial precedent says this right is so precious that, except in the most extraordinary circumstances, it cannot be waived even by the right holder himself or herself.
Is former federal prosecutor Tim Heaphy. He was the chief investigative counsel for the January 6th Congressional Committee. Tim, hold on with me for 1 second. Donald Trump is entering the courtroom. Let's listen and see. Entering the hallway before the courtroom. Let's see if he speaks to reporters. It sure looks like he's going to.
Thank you very much. This is a trial that should have never been brought. It's a trial that is being looked upon, looked at all over the world. They're looking at it and analyzing it. Every legal pundit, every legal scholar said this trial is a disgrace. We have a Trump-hating judge. We have a judge who shouldn't be on this case. He's totally conflicted. But this is a trial that should never happen. It should have been thrown out a long time ago. If you look at Jonathan Turley, Andy McCarthy, all great legal scholars, there's not one that we've been able to find that said this should be a trial. I was paying a lawyer and marked it down as a legal expense. Some accountant, I didn't know, marked it down as a legal expense. That's exactly what it was. And you get indicted over that? I should be right now in Pennsylvania, in Florida, in many other states, North Carolina, Georgia, campaigning. This is all coming from the Biden White House because the guy can't put two sentences together. He can't campaign. They're using this in order to try and win an election. And it's not working that way. It's working the opposite way. So check that out, legal expense. It's called legal expense. That's what you're supposed to call it. Mr. Trump, to get indicted on that, nobody's ever seen it. Nobody has ever seen anything like it. So thank you very much for coming. I'm now going to sit down for many hours. I am now going to sit down. The voters understand it. All you have to do is look at the polls. This is a sham trial, and the judge should recuse himself because it's totally conflicted. Thank you very much.
And that is Donald Trump and his statement before heading back into court. And there's stuff to fact check with our reporters, so let's do it right away. Kristen Holmes joining me now. I think Paula Reed's going to join us as well. Kristen, can we start with the refrain that we have heard from Donald Trump often, where he blames this as all being orchestrated and coming from the Biden White House? There is no basis for those claims.
Well, there's absolutely no basis. And also, I mean, remember, we're in court in New York right now. This isn't even one of the Department of Justice cases where there is some link to the Biden administration because the Department of Justice falls under the administration. Again, there is no link to Biden in any of these cases. However, this is a New York State case. He is entering a courtroom in New York that was brought by the district attorney in New York. This has nothing to do with President Joe Biden. But as we have heard time and time again, Donald Trump has really tried to take control of the narrative here to make this about politics, to make this about quote-unquote election interference, essentially the messaging being that President Biden does not want him running against him in November, so has orchestrated an entire legal system to be on his side to put him through these various trials so that he won't run in November. I will tell you, Kate, this is something that resonates with some of his supporters, some of his base. But again, when it comes to the actual facts of this, that is incorrect. The other part of this that I thought was so interesting is, remember, he did not mention any of the witnesses here. This comes after yesterday, after prosecutors asked the judge to fine Donald Trump over his 3 social media posts in which he mentioned witnesses, saying that he had violated the gag order that said that he couldn't talk about witnesses. We're waiting to see if he does anything with that again. I know that there were reporters asking about that in the hallway. Interesting. Donald Trump just gave his slate speech, came right out of the can, and then walked into that courtroom.
And let me bring in Paul on this.
Trump is set to be back in court later this morning for day 2 of his hush money criminal trial. Criminal trial after the first day ended with no jurors selected for the panel of 12 and 6 alternates, 18 total. So the court spent much of the morning yesterday reviewing several motions before moving on to the jury selection process. One of the motions included Trump's request that Judge Juan Merchan recuse himself from the trial. The judge ruled against it. Judge Merchan also denied any changes to the jury questionnaire. He then denied prosecutors' requests to bring in other allegations of sexual assault against Trump, calling them complete hearsay. Additionally, the Access Hollywood tape will not be admissible in court, but the transcript can be used. The judge also barred prosecutors from introducing the video of Trump's deposition in the E. Jean Carroll case. The jury selection process began then after lunch. A total of 500 potential candidates reported to the courthouse. Of those, the first batch of 96 were brought into the courtroom for questioning. More than half, 50 potential jurors, said they could not be impartial or could not otherwise serve and were immediately dismissed. Reporters noted that Trump watched the potential jurors at times, turning to smirk at them at one point. And several potential jurors in the jury box appeared to frequently stare at Trump while the judge introduced the case. The process will get back underway later this morning. Jury selection could take up to 2 weeks or more due to the large pool of prospective jurors. They brought like 6,000 to the courthouse. There were other cases happening as well, Joe. And of course, we have a full set of legal experts lined up this morning to take a bigger look at what's going on at the Manhattan courthouse with the former president.
Right. We're going to be talking to Chuck Rosenberg, also Lisa Rubin in a minute. But Willie, no surprise at all that they're going to have trouble finding jurors. This could take a long time.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the question in the questionnaire. Do you have any strong opinions or firmly held beliefs about former President Donald Trump? It's hard to find somebody in 2024 who does not have some view of Donald Trump one way or another. So it is going to be a long process. As we saw yesterday, they're just throwing out jurors by the dozens because they say, well, yes, of course I have strong views about Donald Trump.
Yeah, and it is, Jonathan, it is really something. I mean, a criminal case, president going in to courtroom for a criminal case where he has to sit for the next however many weeks and go through the trial.